I've been interviewed by these reporters. Well, Mr. Jones, what happened in Wisconsin? Would you like to talk about? We've had some bad days before. And the one thing I can tell you about this movement is you're going to have to do a whole lot more to us than outspend us 8-1 to beat us in this country and get us to give up. We're not going to surrender, we're not going to back down, and we're not going to let these people run our country. Period. Our grandparents, our great-grandparents knew what it meant to fight for change for real. They had to, my father had to march facing billy clubs, fire hoses. People were put in jail. Some people died for change. And sometimes we act like we want to give up in the face of a really bad tweet. Right. What happened in Wisconsin was awful. But it actually teaches us something. And this movement sometimes needs to learn the hard lesson at the right time. What we learned in Wisconsin is very simple. When we do our minimum as a national movement, I'm not talking about the local forces who fought beautifully. No, the local forces fought beautifully. The local forces fought well. The local forces stood up. The local forces, they created a miracle. They turned a national breakdown into a potential national breakthrough on their own. The labor forces, and let's not forget that the African American and Latino community, especially in Milwaukee, exceeded every expectation and stood up. The local forces. Where were the National Democrats?
That's it. Yeah.
And where were a lot of us? There's something wrong with a movement. We spend more time and energy mourning the loss than we spend time and energy securing the win. We have to take accountability as a national movement. If we don't like the way we felt when we woke up in June, having observed but not fought, there were some exceptions, but the civil rights establishment never showed up in large numbers. There were exceptions, but the environmental movement never showed up in large numbers. There were exceptions, but the women's movement, the National Democrats, none of us showed up in large numbers. We saw it, we observed it, we munched the popcorn, but we didn't jump into the screen. And if we didn't like the way we felt waking up in June with that outcome in that one state, then it gives us a sense of how we might feel in November if we let the same thing go down in the swing states. That's all. Who is now struggling with what are we going to do? Because we don't know how to get fired up again. We feel that if all we do is support the president, support the Democrats, get them back in there, that won't make the difference we want. But then we look at the Tea Party.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for those of us who are no longer comparing Obama to the Almighty and are instead comparing him to the alternative, that don't look too good neither. But you know, some people are like, well, I'm going to teach Obama a lesson. I'm just not going to vote or volunteer or do anything because I'm going to show him. And if he loses, I mean, then we'll all learn. And how bad could it be anyway? I mean, they're all the same. Let me just say a couple things before I move to my main point. If the Tea Party is allowed to score a trifecta, their ideas already are corrupting the Supreme Court. You see that with Scalia's antics. They already have half of the Congress. If they get the rest of it and the White House, if the Tea Party governs America, if this time next year you are living in a government run by the Tea Party, let me suggest to you that they might use power a little bit differently than we did.
true. That's very true.
When they get power, they use it to decimate us.
Yep.
When they get power, the last election was a hope election. This one might be a fear election. They're scared of us. We should be terrified of them. When they get power, they use it to decimate us.
That's right.
Look at what they did in these state houses. They didn't run on destroying the unions, but the minute they got in there, they didn't say, well, perhaps we should make some adjustments to labor law. Let's have a committee. They decapitated our unions. They're running right now, talking about, they don't like the EPA. I'm a green guy. I gotta mention some of this stuff. Somebody gotta mention it. They say they don't like the EPA. They don't say, well, we think the EPA in some areas is overreached and therefore we're going to make some adjustments. They said they're going to eliminate it.
That's right.
Do you think they're joking?
No.
Do you think they're joking?
No.
The EPA has probably saved more American lives in the past 30 years than the Department of Defense. They've probably saved more American lives than the Department of Defense. We're the only people, in case you haven't noticed in American politics, who will go through all the stuff we went through from 2004, 2006, 2008, finally get power. We've got the Senate, we've got the House, we've got the White House, we have the power, now we are going to be bipartisan. Have you noticed an excessive amount of partisan principled behavior on the part of both political parties?
No.
We have been so interested in being bipartisan that we've said bye-bye to our principles, bye-bye to our values, and it's time out for that. We need to stand up now for what we believe in. It's time for us to stand up for what we believe in. And when my kid plays soccer, I want my kid to win. And I don't want your kid to win. I will cheerlead for my kid to win. But here's the difference. As much as I want my kid to win, I don't want my kid to bite your kid or kick your kid. I want my kid to win with honor and dignity, not the kind of stuff we see happening right now from the other side, where they lie and lie and lie and lie and lie. That's not the way to win. We have a responsibility to stand up, but we have to be smarter now than we used to be. If we just support the DC Democrats and the president, we won't get what we want. And if we don't support them, we won't get what we want. That's called a quandary. That's called a quandary. And we have to be as sophisticated as a machine that we now are fighting. We have to be as sophisticated as a system that we are trying to change. We have to do two things that are hard, which means that we have to be twice as committed and twice as passionate as we were in 2008, not half, you see, because we have to do two things. What are the two things? We have to both re-elect the president and re-energize the movement to hold the president accountable to progressive values. That's two tasks, not one. That requires that we learn something from what we just went through over the past 4 years, and really the past 12. My analysis is this. It takes two kinds of power, not one, to get real change. You have to have a president who's willing to be moved, and you have to have a movement who's willing to do the moving. And we have not had both at the same time. Under Bush, you had and you built in this room a beautiful movement for peace. Don't forget, you put millions of people in the streets in America, millions, to stand up for peace. You built the right movement, but you had The wrong president. You got Obama elected. You had arguably the right president, but you had the wrong movement in the streets for almost 3 years. The people who were marching in America were the Tea Party. The movement, the big movement in America, was not your movement, but a movement that stands for the opposite of everything that you believe. And so you had the right president, arguably, but you definitely had the wrong movement. And until Occupy Wall Street came along, we were really screwed. Let's be honest about that. We have to now create a situation where we both have a president who will be willing to be moved and a movement willing to do the moving. And that is hard. Let me give you some incentive. The reason you have to do 2 hard things is because this year you have to win 2 battles and not just one. I'm putting a heavy load on you because I believe that you can handle it. And if you know the truth, you'll fight better. Let's quit with the happy talk. You got 2 hard fights this year, not one. You got to stop the Tea Party in November, and then you got to win the budget battle in December. It's in December that the Bush tax cuts expire. It's in December that the Pell Grant money runs out for low-income kids. It's in December that all the cans that have been kicked down the road that affect the economy, that affect Medicare, that affect the basic budget of America have been kicked down the road. They say, we'll deal with that after the election. We'll deal with that after the election. Well, after the election now has a name. The name is December. Okay? December. That's the so-called grand bargain. A tiny contribution from the rich and a decimating body blow to working families. And we have to stand up and say, no, no, never. We've given enough. We're sick and tired of it. We are sick enough of the bailouts and the bonuses and the tax breaks for the rich folks. It's time for them to pay America back. We paid up our share. It's time for them. But in 2012, we know. We know absolutely, with not one bit of doubt, what the agenda is. They have a wrecking ball agenda. They've taken a wrecking ball. They want to paint it red, white, and blue, call it patriotism, and smash down every American institution our parents and our grandparents fought for. That's what they want to do. They say they want to smash down our unions. They want to smash down public education. They want to smash down clean air and clean water. They want to smash down everything our parents and our grandparents fought for that made this country a great country. They have it in their sights. They told us. The leader, Grover Norquist, says it. He says, I want to shrink America's government down. I want to starve it of taxes. I want to shrink it down to the size that I can drown America's government in a bathtub. I want to drown America's government in a bathtub. Who thinks like that? Somebody's got to stand up. Somebody's got to defend this country. Somebody's got to be about something. Somebody's got to stop being afraid. Somebody's got to stand on principle. Somebody's got to believe in our cause. Somebody's got to stand up. What better place than this? You listen to me. The fight back. The fight back. The fight back. The fight back for America has to start somewhere. What better place than this? What better time than now? What better heroes and sheroes than you? Let's get them. Thank you.